how has the fall affected beauty? Because we still see beauty and order, but then there's also a lot of disorder and ugliness and
Right.
as a result of the fall. So yeah,
Yeah,
how do you
I think part of what the fall did was made it so that beauty became either an undervalued thing or an overvalued thing. And it became this separated thing. We look at exterior beauty or aesthetics different than we look at interior beauty or character, and we separate these out, and a lot of times we will overvalue one or the other, or we'll undervalue both or overvalue both. I think it's kind of difficult to do that, but I think that's what the fall did, is it kind of separated, in many ways in our lives. It made it so that we could not have the perfectly nuanced view of the world that God does. We can't balance all of these different aspects of life. So with beauty, we can't balance the fact that that it's important, but it shouldn't be more important than function, but also function shouldn't be an excuse to leave out beauty. We can't balance it perfectly. We never will. And I think that's just part of all of life. In human nature, I think you see people going to one extreme or to the other. Like take so the Catholic Church, right, is a good example of where beauty can be overvalued. Symbols can start to be overvalued, right? That's how we get people seeing, the cross burned into a piece of toast and like we're practically worshiping that piece of toast. Like, it's kind of funny, but it really does happen where people see some kind of water stain or something like that, and because they have overvalued the cross or the crucible or whatever it's called, they see that as kind of the thing of most importance. But then I think it was the Puritans that it's been a while since I took a history class, but I think it was the Puritans where they came in and they literally like painted over like paintings in churches and made like the interiors completely like white or as empty as possible, because they were disgusted with the way that symbols and aesthetics had taken over the church and were more important than the ultimate purpose, which is to glorify and learn about God. But their response was not right either. Maybe it was at the time to just get people to kind of refocus, but they went to the opposite extreme, and neither is the right way to handle it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I went to John Calvin's church in Switzerland, and it's interesting because on the inside he has this aspect where there's literally no art, and when you go into a Catholic church you have all these sections of saints and the images and everything, but the other aspect is that the church is actually quite beautiful from the outside. And even on the inside, like you have stained glass, it didn't depict anything specific. I think it was something in creation, I can't remember, but you still have these aspects of beauty. But there's that. It's interesting because he makes it bare, the church, for that reason in that time. But it's almost like even as much as you try to do that, you can't escape from like this aspect of beauty. And so, I mean, that's a really important point, though, is tearing apart the symbols from the Word of God. And you have that with everything, really, with communion. If you tear apart the symbols from the Word of God, they become this vague, ritualistic thing in itself.
Right.
And that's I think that's a huge principle in design. Probably is if you have these symbols up and you think there's something in and of itself, something beautiful in and of itself, apart from the meaning, the word, the truth that goes along with it, then it's meaningless, or actually almost dangerous.
Yeah. No, it's interesting actually, because in architecture, especially, if you go to school to study architecture, you will be constantly talking about the deeper meaning behind the space in a certain way. A little bit less so with landscape architecture. It depends on the where you are. They focus, I think they have a better balance of function. I'm biased, but that's also part of why I decided to study landscape architecture. But architecture, especially from my view, unless they're a more technical school, maybe, they really focus on kind of the meaning of the space. They treat it a lot more like art, like a sculpture. How do you feel? What is the light doing? Some to a fault, I would say, but I think it is beautiful that they do recognize the importance of that at the same time. But it's interesting though, because sometimes it does get to the point where it's like, okay, I love that you have this whole deeper meaning behind it, but nobody would know that. Like coming to this building, like maybe architectural critics, but like they just wouldn't know that. They might look and be like, man, this is really beautiful. They might notice that something is happening, but if you don't, if you don't make it explicit, if you don't have the explanation, it's kind of, I don't know, it's lost, which is why it was so important for the Israelites to continue to teach their children and teach the next generation. Why do we do this? Why do we do Passover? What do each of these things symbolize? Why do we have the empty seat, or whatever? Why at each tavern, at each of the feasts, why do we do this? So I think there's such a good principle laid out throughout the Bible from the Lord about using symbolism righteously, and it's hard to do. I think it's hard to do consistently, but it is important.